When people hear the term shadow work, they generally cringe and want to run in the other direction because they automatically assume it's something negative or it's going to be something hard or difficult. But what if I was to tell you that veiled within your own shadows is your spirit, and that shadow work integration is the key to unlocking the mysteries to your own soul? Well, that's exactly what I'm going to tell you. And in this video, I'm also going to share with you 5 different shadow work exercises, real simple ones that you can start to do now. I'm going to share that at the end of the video. So if you're excited, give this video a thumbs up and let's dive right in. Hi, Adam here, and welcome to the Medium channel, where we bring you the spirituality behind the message and assist you in your awakening process. And doing shadow work integration is such a great awakening tool. And it's called integration for a reason. We don't want to lose the shadows. We want to shine the light of awareness on the shadows. Then they cease to become shadows, and they often become our greatest teachers. So Carl Jung describes the shadow aspects as basically the subconscious or hidden parts of ourselves, often associated with self-sabotaging and self-diminishing behaviors in life. And in shamanic practices, or at least what I've studied, it's often described as holes in our power due to loss of soul parts that can evolve out of traumas or events in our lives. So make your shadow your best friend. Walk with your shadow, embrace your shadow. That's how you get past it, and that's how you integrate it. In fact, write down in the comments below, I love my shadow. I love my shadow. So, all right, let's not get carried away here. Anyways, how do shadows form? Well, one is just the separation from spirit. Let me even back up. The birth trauma itself can be a huge shadow maker, and that basically happened to me. I did a shamanic ceremony a lot of years ago, and it wasn't by design, but I wound up re-experiencing my birth, and it was very painful and traumatic. And at that moment, I realized that all the discomfort I had in life that I tried to cover up with drugs and stuff like that stemmed from my birth trauma. And from that experience, I was able to actually get sober from there. So that was really, really cool. So when we're born, it's a trauma. We tend to suppress traumas deep into our psyche. That can form a shadow. And also our physical self starts to separate from our spiritual selves. And that's really where the trouble begins. And honestly, we come to the world, spirit having human experiences. Part of our experiences we're meant to forget who we are as soul and spirit, our other lifetimes, and we get separated from our spirit. It's part of the process of our human growth and evolution. It's not a negative thing, but it is a thing, and it does create the shadows. So also false belief systems, like we get indoctrinated into these false beliefs. In fact, the average person, 95% of what they believe came from somewhere else. Usually it was from other imperfect people that were programmed with false beliefs from other imperfect people, so it kind of trickles down, so to speak. And when we're little children, we treat our parents like they're God. They clothe us, they give us food and shelter. So what they believe and through the power of repetition becomes our belief. But it goes against what we know intrinsically, who we are as spirit, and it creates the separation, and shadow aspects are born from that. Sometimes also shadow, or suppression into the subconscious gets caused by the human survival instinct clashing with our moral codes. And again, moral codes are part of social conditioning, and survival is ugly business. Animals eat animals, but survival instincts in today's society get taken into social context rather than true survival instincts. And if we are in a situation where we need to survive, but it goes against our moral code, we tend to suppress our behaviors into our subconscious, and then they become shadows, and they become repetitive behavior patterns that can sabotage our life. Loss or separation from spirit basically causes us to gravitate towards more familiar patterns of behavior. It's part of our survival instinct. It's just how the ego works. Shadows try to fill the gap left behind by separation of spirit. Focus goes into the ego self to try to form an identity. So when we lose our identity as spirit, then we try to form an earthly identity, and that's how energy and patterns can get suppressed, and that's how shadows can be formed also. So here's a few shadow aspects that you may have or you may understand. One, and I can relate to pretty much all of these, but one is neediness and then people pleasing and stuff like that. And that can come from lack of attention at a young age during those formative years. And then we feel like we have to try harder to get the attention and get the approval of others. Sometimes also fear of scrutiny or shining your light as bright as it can. If you've had a lot of, say, criticism growing up, sometimes you diminish your light and your behaviors cause you to fade into the background rather than owning your power and owning your skills and your talents and your abilities. Sometimes over empathicness, is that a word? Being overly sensitive can be a shadow aspect, especially if there's a lot of dissension or a lot of tension. And that goes back to people pleasing also. Sometimes we please others to avoid tension, but in life we actually have to sometimes create tension. Otherwise, other people control us. And if you had parents that were abusive or verbally violent or whatever, sometimes you develop these high levels of sensitivity to be able to gauge the moods of your parents, and that can cause a shadow aspect of being too sensitive or being oversensitive. Understand that children internalize. So what we see as young children, we believe that we're at fault, that we're creating that, somehow we're at fault. And then we can take on like a lot of things like guilt and shame, which again become shadow aspects that diminish our power and diminish our ability to create things in our lives and to be more connected to spirit. So let me talk about a couple of the pre-steps before we get into the exercises now. And if you've been following my channel for a while, you probably know what I'm going to say. Meditation presence, meditation presence. Oh, okay. I'll stop. Also journaling. So, practice, get into a meditation practice. Practice presence daily. Every time you think about it, stop your thoughts and be aware of everything. And on other videos, I explain that a little bit further. Keeping a journal will help you to chart your progress and recognize patterns. So journaling is good. And guided self-observation is very important. Observe your shadows. Observe how you react to the environment. These will give you important clues because from our programming and from our suppressed shadows, we're basically wired to predictably act in every conceivable situation in our lives, or I should say react. So instead of being the reaction, learn how to step outside of yourself and observe your shadows being triggered. Observe your reactions. And in that moment, you become the observer of your shadows rather than being the shadows. When you observe the shadows, then you can shine the light of awareness on them. Also, practice grounding. Being grounded is very important. And when we're grounded, we're strong, we're solid, and we can withstand some of the emotional ups and downs that go with shadow work. So do your grounding, and also do something called heart-brain coherence. And I have other videos on that teach you step-by-step how to do that. And it's also taught by Heart Math Institute. It's a way to raise the emotional frequency of the heart and integrate your brain and your heart to make them coherent. And when that happens, shadow work integration and all your spiritual exercises become much easier because you're approaching it from the heart. You're approaching it from your spirit. So let's talk about the 5 processes, the 5 exercises of shadow work integration that I have for you. They are all original. Exercise number 1 I call shadow projection. What you do with this one, you get nice and relaxed and meditate, get into a deep state, and then you imagine or visualize what your shadow, like a silhouette of yourself in front of you, maybe several feet in front of you. So visualize that, and then feel your heart opening with compassion and love, and visualize a beautiful gold or white light shining and illuminating that shadow. And when that happens, scan the details of that shadow self, which is part of who you are. And what does that feel like? What emotions come up? What feelings you get in your body? Maybe see what color comes to you, or what sound, or does the energy feel warm and cool? And scan for the details, and then you don't have to assess or judge anything. Just do the process. You write down in your journal how that felt, maybe why that was hard, or what insights you gained, and do that as a daily exercise. And that's going to give you greater familiarity with your shadow, and it's going to help you to integrate it that way. Number 2, I call the flame boundary technique. What you do in this one is you take a candle and you meditate on the candle, and you gaze deep into the flame and gaze into that bright spot in the flame. And then in your mind, you step into that flame and see and experience the fire of the flame all around you. So see yourself in the flame, and this fire is like your aura, it's your power, it's your spirit. But it also helps to separate you from collective consciousness. Sometimes to do our shadow work, we have to step back from the world and step back from collective consciousness, because that's the source of a lot of our trigger points and a lot of our programming, and be in our own frame, be in our own power. This is especially powerful if you have problems with things like boundaries, or saying no to people and stuff like that. Now, number 3, I call shadow dialogue. And like in number 1, what you want to do is you want to see your shadow in front of you, see the silhouette, open your heart, shine the light onto the shadow, and then when that happens, just get 1, 2, or 3 words. So when you connect with your shadow, when you see the light, and you start to feel the energy and start to feel the details, and don't think about it, just set the intention, get a word, make yourself get it if nothing comes instantly, even if you think you're making it up. Now, once you have your word, 1, 2, or 3 words, sit down and meditate on that word for a moment, and without thinking about it, just write a short paragraph about that word. Once you write the paragraph, kind of look at it and just get a sense of maybe what your shadow is trying to tell you. Because again, we want to reintegrate it. It's part of our power. It's a part of our spirit that got lost through socialization and through conditioning and through traumas and false beliefs. So number 4 is called the golden flame. And this is a great tool for embracing unhealthy aspects of your shadow, to release. So we have to embrace with love before we can release anything. And the way that we do that is that when you're doing your work and you can actually identify an unhealthy pattern or unhealthy behaviors, or if you tend to get like certain emotions that come up when you do your work, like fear or depression or anxiety, what you can do with those is in your mind, feel it for a moment, and then just in your mind give it a shape and a color. And once you have that, treat it with love. Like your shadow's your teacher, so embrace it with love and gratitude. And once you do that, visualize a golden fire in front of you, place that shape in the fire, and just see it burn down, and integrate and embrace the healthy part of that back into your body, back into your aura, back into your system. But see the rest of it burn away as thick black smoke. So that's the golden flame. And number 5 is a little soul retrieval process that I learned how to do. And that's a shamanic practice when you go back to a trauma in your life and retrieve part of the soul that was lost in that trauma. Now, the way that I did this, and it came on just really by accident, or Spirit gave it to me, and I was meditating, and I was working with Archangel Raphael. Now, you can use any spirit guide that you want. It doesn't have to be Raphael, or you can use Source or God, or Great Spirit. But the idea is just, you've set an intention. I want to go back to some period where there was a trauma that created or caused some of my shadow behaviors in life. And when I did this, I saw myself at 6 years old crying in my room. Me and Archangel went back there. So I started to talk to the crying boy, and I told him how special he is, how beautiful he is, how loved he is, and that things have to be hard now because it's preparing you for a great mission in life. And as I was doing this, I was literally in my mind seeing the boy, he was crying, kind of seeing him almost like smiling between the tears. And when I got that, I just gave him a great big hug and brought him back into my heart and reintegrated him. And then Archangel took me back into the present. So try these. Again, shadow work is a very important step in the awakening process. This is the way to reclaim the totality of your power and integrate your shadows, and all that energy that goes into creating a shadow self. And part of that's your survival instinct. You start to bring back, and then all of a sudden you're not lethargic anymore. You're not depressed anymore. You're not lazy or whatever it is. You have a lot of spunk, a lot of energy, and you feel love and joy much more often. So do this. You deserve it. And thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you at the next one. Aloha.